easy way to lay out your paraglider. While hand kiting is a skill of many uses, making you look cool being one of the most important, it is also one of the more challenging to gain competence with. So this video aims to give you step-by-step instruction on how to hand kite your glider just like your seasoned instructor does. So here are some reasons why you need to get better at hand kiting. It allows you to pre-flight your wing very quickly, sorting out any friction knots or line overs. It tells you exactly what the wind is doing, both in strength and direction. When you lay it back down, it gives you that perfect layout for your clipped in inflation. And wow. C-130 just flew by. Aviation. And best of all, it does all of this in under 10 seconds, getting you in the air that much quicker. Be sure to watch to the end where we go out to the field and actually demonstrate the skills we're going to talk about in this video, as well as some added bonus tips for you guys. Let's get after it. Gotta start by throwing a quick disclaimer out to you guys by saying that the videos on this channel are not meant to replace in-person USPPA rated instruction. The goal of this channel is to either supplement the training you've already received, furthering your understanding of concepts that you should already be familiar with, or to give you a head start in your progression as a paramotor pilot. Please do not teach yourself how to fly, you're gonna die. So with that paperwork out of the way, guys, let's jump into the mental and physical preparation we need to do before we go ahead and hand kite our glider. Starting with a solid PMA. This idea of mentally expecting success carries across all the videos on my channel. And I mention it so often because it is such a key part in a student's growth towards the goal of becoming a confident, skillful pilot. So this is how we always start. And to aid our PMA, we want to keep our oxygen levels elevated well before we touch the risers. In addition to our expectant mindset and elevated oxygen levels is this idea of visualizing success before we execute. As an example, if the wing is dipping to the left, what will it look like? What will it feel like? What do I need to do with my hands and feet in order to maintain stability? And how much input do I need in order to fix the situation without overcorrecting? Doing this preparation before every single inflation, whether you have a motor on or not, is going to have a drastic positive effect on your progression in general. Moving on to the physical side of our preparation, let's go ahead and check in with the environmental factors. Once we have made sure that we have plenty of space for our kiting session with minimal objects or terrain upwind, it's time to make sure that we have the minimum required wind speed to successfully hand kite. It is not much fun blowing out your knees or quads, pulling up this wing in no wind, only to end up dragging it across your dewy field, making your life a lot harder in the long run. So let's save our body, our wing, and our pride and wait for at least 4 miles per hour of wind speed before attempting to hand kite our glider. As I mentioned in my reverse kiting video, and I'll say it again here, if we have laid out our glider and it's getting blown across the field, we are better off waiting for conditions to settle down, and I'm just gonna say it, especially if we suck. But being able to test the flying conditions is one of the great things about hand kiting. If we tend to get that glider up in conditions that are too much for us, we can just let that wing go and worry about the detangling event afterwards. With mental and physical preparation out of the way, let's jump into step 1. So we're going to start by picking up the risers by the bridles with our left or non-dominant hand. And with our right or dominant hand, we're going to collect both of the A's with an underhand grip, making sure that those A's rest symmetrically. With your left hand or non-dominant hand, you're going to find the rear riser, and with an overhand grip, you're going to grab as close to the malleons as possible. This over-underhand grip allows for a natural feel once we have that wing overhead, with our fingers facing the glider. Before I move on to step 2, I want you to imagine a scale that you are balancing. Your dominant hand is attached to the leading edge, with the trailing edge being in your other. And your job is to balance the scale appropriately to both give the wing life and keep it under control. Let's go ahead and move on to step 2 to talk about the inflation itself. So just like any other inflation, we start off by finding our center on this wing. In this case, the wind is blowing straight on our back and flowing right into the center cells of our glider. As we pull a little bit of tension, we want to observe even slack on all 4 lines. So we are ready to inflate. But right before you do, I'm gonna say it again, let's visualize the process. All the way from the inflation into the control and then back down to the ground again. Yes, it's woo-woo, but woo-woo works. That was hard to say. After you've done your final visualization, it's time to take action by moving straight backwards into the wind. As you do this, we keep straight arms, but we want to slightly tip the scales towards the leading edge to allow that glider to easily get through that power zone and get above our heads. But in order for the wing to come to life, we need to maintain some tension on those brakes. If we had all of the A's, we're not letting this wing form into any sort of structure. So we need to hold some brakes. Find the balance in the scale to make this easy, and it only comes through repetition. It's time for a tangent. While the information I am providing here is fine and dandy, and worth a like and subscription if you haven't already, in reality, there's nothing that I or anybody else on YouTube can say that is going to magically improve your skills. You have to get out there and do it, and do it, and do it some more. Only through this repetition and an open mind are you going to gain the nuanced feel that is required to become the wing whisperer that you desire to be. End tangent. So now that we are moving backwards with the right amount of tension on the risers, the wing should quickly pass through the power zone and into the control phase. While during a forward or reverse inflation, we would now be letting go of the A's. In this case, we cannot do that, otherwise the wing is going to lose its total structure that we talked about earlier. Instead, what we'll do, as that wing settles into the control phase, we will settle our hands back to a neutral position, evenly balancing the scales forward and backward. Depending on how strong your wind is, that wing may shoot forward and try to overfly you and get into frontal territory, not the good kind. And we'll need to check the wing by pulling harder on the brakes to keep that from happening. Like the video if you laughed as hard as my wife did at that. But too much on the brakes and that wing will be heading right back where it came from. So just pay attention, observe the wing. Just like your girlfriend, that wing is not gonna stop telling you what she needs. Are you even listening to me? So now we are into the control phase. Congratulations, the wing is overhead and stable, but before you get too cocky, Mother Nature is likely to change things up on you. So we need to talk about the control inputs that we have access to. As I mentioned before, with our arms, we're balancing a scale forward and backwards, thinking about the dominant hand as gas and your non-dominant hand as brakes. And this controls the pitch of the glider. If it's starting to sag back, we pull more on the gas and get that wing back overhead, but catching it with the brakes before it does what we talked about earlier. But in addition to the pitch axis, we also have access to the yaw axis. Lots of axes. So imagine a steering wheel that your dominant hand is on top of and your non-dominant hand is on the bottom of. And if you turn the steering wheel to the right, the wing is going to yaw to the right as well. The other control component that we have access to is our feet. So initially our feet are providing an anchor point for this wing to pivot around and from. But now that the wing is up and overhead, our feet can be useful to provide more airspeed for that wing to stay alive. The faster air is going in and over our wing, the more sensitive and responsive it's going to be to our inputs. Imagine driving a car on the freeway versus in a parking lot. This much input in the steering wheel in a parking lot is going to do nothing, while this much input on the freeway is going to kill you. So just be aware of how much input you're having based on the wind speed. With enough wind, say 6 miles per hour, we really don't need to do anything with our feet if we are suave enough, but you're not yet. So we're going to supplement the control with our hands, with our feet, and maintain what we call pendular stability to that wing, because all we are is a big dumb pendulum after all. What I find helpful to imagine is a big broomstick poking out of the top of your head, and you've got to balance that broomstick by stepping left or right underneath it to maintain that stability. So let's say we've got this glider up and over our head, and suddenly it decides to lean to the left for one reason or another. The first step we can be making here is to watch the center cell point in the direction that it's going to go. If we can keep an eye on that center cell lengthwise, we can know which way we need to step early on to maintain pendular stability instead of catching it and fixing the issue. So if the wing begins to yaw left and then start rolling left, we need to step left underneath that leaning side and simultaneously control that steering wheel back to the right, because we're steering that glider in the direction we want it to go. Okay, that's enough theory talk. Let's go out to our flying field and put all of this together practically. A's are away, just like I would be doing any other clip-in. What I'm gonna do first, I'm gonna pick up both of the bridles, bring them together, hold them in my left hand. My right hand, I'm going to go ahead and find both of the A's and hold them symmetrically. So I've got both A's with an underhand grip. With my non-dominant hand, or my left hand in this case, I'm gonna grab as close as I can to the malleons at the bottom of the riser, with my thumb being fed through the brake handles. This just keeps everything together nice and neat. I'm holding my steering wheel left and right, and I'm balancing my scale forward and backwards. So before we inflate, let's go ahead and visualize the steps that you're going to take if the wing is dipping to the left. If it is, we're gonna step left and we're gonna steer the glider right. When I get ready to inflate, I'm just going to keep straight arms but emphasize the A's as I walk backwards, and then follow through with some brake pressure. A little bit more on the A's to get that wing to come up all the way overhead. There we go, yawing it to the right as that center sail points to the left, and stepping under the low side. A little bit more on the A's to get that wing to come up overhead. Okay, that's enough. So I'm gonna add some brakes and get even tension on these lines. Just kind of walking in general backwards to keep the speed up and keep the wing alive, as I've got really switchy winds here. And when in doubt, keep moving. Keep that wing alive. So I'm just watching that center seam, that center couple of cells, tell me which direction the wing is gonna point. See, it's pointing to the left, so I know the wing's going to dive left. I've got to step left and steer right. It's just nuanced motion. It doesn't have to be a lot of input. It is all about doing as little as possible to let the wing do its thing, as I like to say. I'm able to do my pre-flight inspection on the wing here, make sure I have no tangled lines, no bushes in my lines. Once I've determined that, okay, I'm ready to clip in, this wing is not picking me up, I'm not getting dragged across the field while holding onto it, I'm gonna go ahead and set it back down, holding onto the A's to let the glider hover for a second, balancing the brakes and the A's. And then I'm gonna just pull on the brakes and give the A's to the wing. And you can see how that lets that leading edge display nicely instead of being closed, something like that. Give those A's back as you lay that glider down on the ground. We briefly interrupt this broadcasting to let you know that Lifted PPG is on Patreon, where you can support this banging content with a monthly contribution, providing me with the caffeine needed to provide you with such good content.
I'm so sorry.
And also receive some pretty unique bennies. Check it out in the description below. And a quick shout out goes to these guys right here for supporting this very video. All right, lots of wind here, so it's gonna be really easy to pop this glider up. All I'm gonna do is gently tug on the A's and follow through with the brakes as the wing comes up. And so often when people get the wing up, they tend to pull too much on the brakes. It just pulls the glider right back down to the ground. On the flip side, if I have too much on the A's, the wing has no structure. Oh, switchy winds. Getting my back into the wind. It's getting a little rowdy on me, so I just pulled a little bit more brakes. In case you were wondering, these are not flying conditions. So since it's getting rowdy on me, I'm just gonna crank more on the brakes and let that wing come back down to the ground so that the wing has no ability to fly anymore. If your wing is bunched up like this, you really have to emphasize the A's a lot more than the brakes initially, until that trailing edge kind of scoots out from underneath the wing, and then you can follow through with a little bit of brakes. So A's initially, follow through with the brakes, A's again to get that wing through the power zone, and then even out tension, balancing the scales. Perfect. The wing's behaving nicely. It's starting to, oh, there's a little bit of frontal, so I pull more on the brakes, follow through with the A's. It is just rowdy here, folks. Just watching the wing, just observing what she needs. Very nice. Oh, just lost some tension there, so I pulled more on the brakes initially, follow through with the A's. And if she's starting to come down funny, crank more on the brakes and get that wing down. My wing is coming over to one side. Don't step away from it, step towards it and then crank on those brakes to get that wing to fall back on its trailing edge. Okay, here's another bonus tip for you guys. If you only have half a wing, this should be okay because you have baffles that will share the air throughout the wing. A's are on the top. Follow through on those A's, step to the right, the low side, and up we go. Oh my gosh. There we are. And we have a wing. Let's lay it down nice and easy while we still can. Do not fly in these conditions, guys. All right, bridles together. Gonna rosette the wing up and put her away. Over to you, Micah, for the outro. Thank you guys for watching till the end. Please drop any questions, comments, concerns, snide remarks down in the comment section below. I love connecting with you there. That's it for today's video. If you're looking to improve your inflations, check out either of these videos here. This is Lifted PPG. My name is Micah Stevens. Don't forget to take that deep breath, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.